Every day I search in spite of me. Every day I search for what I cannot see. Every day I search for you. Every day I search for the truth. Just can't help falling in love with you. More with everything you do. Speak and the mountains tremble with fear. And at the sound of your voice, I know you are near, be near to me. Every day I long deep inside of me. Every day I long for what's plain to see. Every day I long to be with you. Every day I long for the truth.
and welcome to Church Online with the Ecclesian House. I'm Pastor Bill, and this is... Who are you?
Pastor Jonathan or Pastor Nooms, whichever.
Pastor Nooms. All you had to do was say Pastor Nooms. I don't know why you're waffling.
I don't either, man. I'm tired. It was a long day yesterday.
So, yeah. I went back to doing Uber and Lyft this week.
Uh-huh.
That was interesting because a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers have now given up on even trying.
Yep.
And so I had seen a dip to about, 50% of normal.
Uh-huh.
And then I stepped out for about a week and a half. And then I went driving Monday and Tuesday. Just Monday and Tuesday. And
Monday and Tuesday?
I saw about 90% of the normal business that I normally see.
Okay.
So that was interesting. So.
That is interesting.
Yeah. No airport runs, of course, but.
Well, I had someone come in from the airport yesterday.
Did you?
Yep.
Who was that?
The bride's father.
Ah.
So.
Did he tell you what the airport's like right now, or?
We can talk about that later.
Oh, okay. I see.
It was an interesting. There were extra circumstances that most people wouldn't have had to deal with, and so.
And she said it felt like a
Okay.
bee stinging her, but there's no. She's got it right here, but that's just.
So.
Okay. So how was your Easter?
What?
We spoke after Easter.
Yeah, that was last.
We did.
Sunday.
But how was your Easter?
It was pretty good. Sorry, one of the girls is having an issue in the background because something is stinging her and she's not sure what. So.
It's that skateboard that was chasing her earlier.
It was a skateboard that was chasing her earlier.
Yeah,
Well, see, that's what I thought, but it's not what's actually going on. So I don't know what is actually going
It's
on.
not the skateboard.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So I got a steamer for my green screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, you gotta go. Okay. Love you.
It's called Steamfast.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, if I ever need to quick boil 16 ounces of water,
You can there?
right here, man. I mean, less than 60 seconds, boiling water right there. That was crazy.
That is kind of crazy.
Crazy fast, man. All right. So this week's podcast was called The Miscorrelation of the Thief.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And basically we're talking about the event between Jesus on the cross and the thief next to him who declared that... Why are you laughing?
Background.
I'm sorry.
The thief next to Jesus who declared that Jesus was the Messiah. And then, Jesus tells him, truly I tell you today you'll be with me in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people talk about that being... Hold on one second.
I'm sorry.
Had some background noise of my own to deal with there for a second. Anyway. Why are you dancing?
He had to mute for a second.
Oh.
But they can still hear everything you guys are doing. Why am I dancing? Because there's music in my head. Why aren't you dancing? Isn't there music in your head?
Dancing to the music in my head.
So thief on the cross, misrepresentation.
Right. And so there's lots and lots of pastors that use this. But the point isn't to single out people that are using this passage wrong, because we're not interested in that. The point is to spread information about this passage so that people that are using it can then not be using it incorrectly in the future. People who are sitting in churches and they hear this used, they can rest solid in the knowledge that they know what's actually going on here. Maybe even take their pastors aside and say, hey, can we talk about that passage? And you know, just walk through it and, you know, see if, as Peter is, I think it's Peter that says it, to win your brother over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point. The point isn't to cast shade on anyone who's used it incorrectly in the past.
Of course.
But to chart a course for the future.
Yep.
As with most things that we do when we call out that something's being used wrong or said wrong or whatever. Okay. So, so the place we wanted to start, we brought it up last week. We wanted to start in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 9, right?
Okay.
Okay. And I know last week you said, if you've got scriptures you're going to read, you let me know ahead of time, and I'll have them ready to pull up on the screen. It'll be cool. And then I didn't do that, so that's on me.
That's okay. Right now, everyone's seeing me pull up my e-sword because I didn't pull it up beforehand either. So, which that was another funny thing at the wedding. I'll tell you about when you're ready for wedding stories. When we get to that part of the evening.
We're going to talk about wedding stories in the live stream?
Yeah, when we get to that part of the evening.
I went and got my hard copy CSB. I don't pull out my hard copy much anymore since I started driving Uber and Lyft because, you know, I'm out in my car. And
yeah, that was part of the funny yesterday. Someone asked, they're like, is that your Bible you use every day? And I said, actually, this is a Bible that just looks pretty. It's my prettiest Bible. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, this isn't actually a version I use even every day anymore. It's just, all my versions are digital, actually.
Yeah.
I have one.
We live in a digital age. I mean,
I said I have one small, but a small CSB wouldn't. It's not the same effect as holding a black Bible as holding the little. You know, I got the little with the crown of thorns on it. And I was like, it's not the same effect. So.
Really, the only thing that the printed Bible's got going for it now anymore is, I heard, you know, it was said that you're not one day going to pass your iPad down to your kids with all of your notes about what certain scriptures meant to you, but if you're writing in the margins what scriptures mean to you, then one day you can pass that Bible down to your kids, and they can be studying through the Bible and go, oh, look what this scripture meant to Dad, you know.
Unless you are raised in a household where you don't write in books, period, or else, you know, you write in journals. You don't write in books because books are not writable. And you don't have any of that from your parents, or your kids won't have that.
Books are sacrosanct?
It's not that they're sacred, it's just you don't write in them.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those, the reason it was explained to me is it's not that the book is sacred, not the Bible, this is books in general, is you want the person to be able to first come upon their own.
What are you doing, Roxanne? No, seriously, come here. What are you doing? Are you on a house party?
Yeah.
Let me see that. Who are you on a house party with?
Katie and Timmy.
Oh, it's turned around. Turn.
Shouldn't they be watching?
Tell them to be quiet.
Hello.
Oh, I dropped. 1 second.
What are you doing?
It's live streaming.
Yeah, congratulations. You're all on the live stream now.
There you go. You were on the live stream.
Yay.
Not Katie, though. All Katie has is a red screen, but Jesse and Avery and Timmy's right boob were on the live stream. Okay. So Hebrews 5:9, but I'm going to read 7 through 10. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. During his earthly life, that's Jesus. During Jesus' earthly life, he offered prayers and appeals with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was the Son, he learned obedience from what he suffered. After he was perfected, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, and he was declared by God a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Now we know from other scriptures that he was perfected when he was raised from the dead, right? Yeah, it would have been much better if you had beat me to the punch and said raised from the dead there. So then it would have been like, oh yeah, it's a thing. But you didn't say that. So stop scratching your head. What are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing.
All right. So that's where we wanted to start, because when we talk about the thief and Jesus, Jesus had not yet been perfected.
Right.
If he was perfect, he wouldn't have been able to die. He wouldn't have been able to humble himself to death.
Right.
And he wasn't the source of eternal salvation yet.
The resurrection is what allowed for that.
Right. Resurrection is what allowed for that, because his death and resurrection is how he defeated sin and death.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then paradise can't be what in our modern culture we refer to as quote unquote heaven. It's got to be something else, right?
Right, because the place wasn't prepared yet. Also,
that's a good point.
There wasn't a human area for heaven, is one way to look at that at that point. Because he goes to prepare at his ascension, not here.
Well, even if you talk about the word heaven, the way it's used in the Bible, when they use the word heaven or heavens, they could be referring to any one of 7 different levels, as they understood it, of heaven. Everything from where the birds and the clouds are, all the way up to the very top layer, which is God's home of heaven, which is the one that, in modern terms, when we talk about heaven, that's what we're talking about. But in biblical context, they could be talking about anything in between. But specifically paradise, that was that third level of heaven that they also reference as Abraham's bosom.
You're snapping your pen?
I did.
Yes.
And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul's funny. He talks about, I know a guy that was taken up into the third heaven. And he identifies that as paradise. Don't you find Paul funny that way?
Paul is special in a lot of ways.
2 Corinthians chapter 12, boasting is necessary. It is not profitable, but I will move on to visions and revelations of the Lord. I know a man in Christ who was caught up to the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether he was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. God knows. I know that this man, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know, God knows, was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words, which a human being is not allowed to speak. I will boast about this person, but not about myself, except of my weaknesses. So he draws this line, when he goes, yeah, I know this guy that I want to boast about, and it's not me. It's just not me, because I'm not perfect. This guy was perfect. And I'm going to boast about his perfections and the things that he did that were good. But I'm weak and frail. But I know a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know a guy?
I hope we all know a guy. I mean, that's our whole goal, is to introduce people to a guy.
Yeah. So Jesus uses this word paradise, paradisos. And it's only used 3 times in the Bible. It's there with Jesus on the cross, and then it's there. Paul says it in 2 Corinthians 12. And then Jesus uses it again in Revelation chapter 2. When he says... I didn't plan on pulling out my hard copy Bible, so I don't have these, like... I should have put little markers, so I could just turn straight to them.
Mm-hmm.
In Revelation chapter 2, verse 7, let anyone who has ears to hear listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. The paradisos. Which fits because the Jewish scribes had always taught that the Garden of Eden was in that third level of heaven, that it was in that paradise. But it's guarded by 2 cherubim with big flaming swords, and big Arnold Schwarzenegger looking angels with wings and multiple faces.
No.
Some scary guys.
Nope. Sorry. Arnold Schwarzenegger's little compared. They're like 9 feet tall, dude. That is a very bad, like we're talking like Andre the Giant plus a little more type dudes. Like,
yeah, but Andre the Giant wasn't fit like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Andre the Giant was like
it didn't matter.
Potato that could move.
Yeah, but once you get to that big, you just move everything else too. You don't have to be jacked. It's so much harder to be jacked. Yes, jacked is cool, but we're talking Hulk-sized dudes with multiple faces and not as wide, probably, most of them. But that's beside the point. Like, we're talking, it's not 6'4" kind of guys. We're talking,
What was that? What was that? All that?
You know how they get all showy when they're really jacked like that.
That's funny.
Just watching someone like The Rock workout makes my muscles sore.
Yeah.
When he puts his workouts on like TikTok or Instagram or places, and I'm just like,
Just watching The Rock eat sushi makes me sore.
just the one movement, you're like, that's more calories. He just burned more calories moving his arm. But we're talking big people. We're not talking small angels. Not
we're talking
cherubims.
big angels.
Not little cherubims that you think of that are little plaster guys.
No, not little cherubs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cherubums.
Yeah. Big difference.
Yeah. Big difference. Yeah. So, Jesus does then die, and he goes to Hades. Not just Sheol. He doesn't go to paradise. He goes to Hades. And we know he goes to Hades because David prophesied about it, and then the New Testament echoes it in Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2. Chapter 2. Okay, let's start in verse 30. Acts chapter 2, verse 30. Since he was a prophet, he knew, talking about David, since David was a prophet. I guess we'll back up to verse 29 then. Brothers and sisters, I can confidently speak to you about the patriarch David. He is both dead and buried, and his tomb is with us to this day. Since he was a prophet, he knew that God had sworn an oath to him to seat one of his descendants on his throne. Seeing what was to come, he spoke concerning the resurrection of the Messiah. He was not abandoned in Hades, and his flesh did not experience decay. Right. So Jesus died and went to Hades. Not the hell spoken of in Revelations.
Different places.
Because that's a different place. But Hades, and I'm guessing the lowest level of Hades, because Hades too has 7 levels, according to Jewish and Sumerian myths. Hades has 7 levels where the worst offenders are placed in the very bottom level, which is much like the hell that we think of, fire and weeping and gnashing of teeth and what's that word where you can feel something that's not there? Tangible darkness. Tangible darkness. And I'm assuming because it was the lowest level, because Jesus had just taken on the whole sin of all humanity for all time.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah. He literally became the worst of the worst.
Yeah. Because he bore it all.
Yeah, he bore it all for all time. Like, that's some pretty heavy sin.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is we don't actually know how long it took him to get to paradise from that bottom layer of Hades. Now we know Earth time. It was within 24 hours because he told the thief today.
Yeah.
So within the next 24 hours, you're going to be with me in paradise. But we don't know what kind of way time passes
there
in Hades during those 24 hours.
Yeah.
We know that Peter in 2 Peter 3:8 gives us a glimpse into the concept that time is relative. Dear friends, don't overlook this one fact. With the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day. So time is not necessarily concrete to, well, the sun came up and the sun went down and 24 hours of Earth time. Time everywhere isn't necessarily that way. It could have been 1,000 years.
The spiritual realm is much different.
Yeah. Or just under 1,000 years, because he said today. So.
Well, and that word "as" is important too.
Which word "as"?
As 1,000.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It's
not "is." It's
not an exact definition of direct correlation 1-to-1. Yeah.
What's it that David Tennant said? Say it. It's terrible, but say it.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, wibbly wobbly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Haha, you had to say it.
The 10th Doctor. See my sonic screwdriver? It's not the 10th Doctor's. It's one that I built myself from different parts from a kit. But it doesn't work.
Why doesn't it work?
I need to get new batteries for it.
I was gonna say, did you build it wrong?
No.
Now, because you have one extra large heart, is that similar to having two? I'm just.
No, I still have a regular heartbeat. It's just
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm a jerk. Yeah, you drink. Wait, why are you having? Oh no, you always still drink Monsters. I forgot. You can't do the bangs; they're too sweet.
Yeah.
And you don't like
Too
the
sweet.
orange ones that are lower sugar? I mean, lower sodium. Okay.
No. Okay. Tim the Author, Days of 1,000 Years, Messiah in Hades. So we also know that you can, from paradise, see down into the top level of Hades.
Mm-hmm.
And even talk back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that, Pastor Noobs?
A parable.
A parable?
Parable.
Because Jesus told us a story where it happened, didn't he?
Yep.
Do you know where that's located?
The Gospels.
The Gospels. It's in Luke chapter 16.
That's right. Of course it is.
And I'll just read you the whole parable. Luke chapter 16, starting in verse 19. If anyone later wants to follow along when you're watching this, because there's nobody on live right now. Nobody's gotten on at all the whole time. That's fine.
Wait a second. Wait 1 second.
What's up?
Why? Why do we assume that this one is a parable?
A parable just means story. It doesn't mean fake story. It just means story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that for our viewers.
Yeah. Parable can mean truth. Parable can mean allegory. There's no definition.
Because some of them are allegories. Some of them are examples. Some of them are... And then there's nothing in this one that necessarily says it's not...
Right.
Correct.
Right. Like the man who built his house on the sand.
Right.
It's very clearly a what if allegory. It's not a direct story. It's not something that really happened. Okay.
No farmer threw his stuff on different types of ground either, because no farmer is dumb.
Right. Yeah, that's an allegory too. Okay. So it says, there was a rich man who would dress in purple and fine linen, feasting lavishly every day. But a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, was lying at his gate. He longed to be filled with what fell from the rich man's table, but instead the dogs would come and lick his sores. One day the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. And being in torment in Hades, he looked up and saw Abraham a long way off, with Lazarus at his side. "Father Abraham," he called out, "have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this flame." So even the top layer of Hades has flames. "Son," Abraham said, "remember that during your life you received your good things, just as Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here while you are in agony. Besides all this, a great chasm has been fixed between us and you, so that those who want to pass over from here to you cannot, neither can those from there cross over to us." "Father," he said, "then I beg you to send him to my father's house, because I have 5 brothers to warn them. Because I have 5 brothers to warn them, so they also won't come to this place of torment." But Abraham said, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." But he told him, "If they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded if someone rises from the dead." Right. Rich man being tormented in Hades, and he looks up and sees Abraham and Lazarus in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can see the 3rd level of heaven from the top level of Hades. Would that mean the top level of Hades is higher than Earth?
Again, spiritual realm. It gets real fuzzy. Like, one of the things...
Would it even be on this?
Plane? Exactly. Dimension, plane, same thing. Well,
Really?
similar things.
Are you watching? Because this says there's no watchers. Oh. This says there's nobody tuned in right now. That's weird. Roxanne says my audio is funky. It was fine and it went tinny.
It's... Can't hear you, or what's wrong with it? I mean, you cut in and out every now and then.
It got lower and echoier, she says.
I turned you up a little. We'll see.
But there's a delay, so that was like a minute ago.
Yeah. It does, you know, we're streaming. So there are times when the packages...
And I'm out in the middle of nowhere.
The packages do go wonky. And you get all fuzzy, and it gets off. Every now and then your video gets ahead of your audio. And then it catches back up all of a sudden. It's kind of humorous when it does, because then all of a sudden it looks like I'm watching a poorly dubbed Pastor Bill.
She said the audio is back to normal now.
Okay.
Also, she said her and Tina are both on Facebook, but my little interface here says nobody's watching at all.
The little interface doesn't always work. Let's be honest. We know that. No one. We actually have a couple viewers on Twitch as well because I'm looking at Twitch as Twitch. So.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. Normally, you could interact with me on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube and Periscope, but the chat thing's going wonky today. So
many people are using the services because of everything going on.
Yeah.
It's causing lots of issues across all platforms.
I can't get any videos to upload to Instagram TV.
Yeah, I couldn't get anything
I
to
download it, and within 10 seconds it errors out.
I did something to TikTok, and then I tried to port it over to Snapchat like normal, and it just it wouldn't, even though it was the right timing. So I mean,
so you go from TikTok to Snapchat?
Yeah.
I watched this one comedian on TikTok that makes all of his video pieces on Snapchat.
Yeah, and then goes over.
And then pieces them together and uploads them to TikTok.
Yeah.
He uses filters so he can be different characters. He's got this old lady character, and then he couldn't find the filter for a little bit, and he was like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do?" And I was like, "Well, currently all your characters are in quarantine in the church for 2 weeks. You could kill off one of the characters."
That's not nice. That's not nice, man.
That's not nice.
It's not nice.
So you know what he did? The next episode he made it as if they were reading her obituary. And then she walked in and she was like, "What are you doing?" It was great.
Yeah, there's some original content stories and shorts and stuff that are pretty good. Tina last night goes, "Why have you listened to the same sound 20 times in a row?" And I'm like, it's one of those part 1 she did something, and then part 2 she did something, and part 3 she did something.
What is so interesting about the same video?
She's like, "You're watching the same video?" I'm like, "No, baby, it's one of those stupid OCs of what happens when, and imagine a world where, and all these crappy OCs that I end up watching for no good reason because I'm old."
That's funny. All right, so I don't actually have any other notes about the podcast, unless you have something you want to talk about the podcast. This is not really one of those areas where you and I have different views. I mean,
we don't very much. There is, we have different. Whoa, that audio went sideways. Sorry. We have some different takes, slightly on some of it, because
I would love to talk that out because. There's people watching and they need to know that there may be some areas in this that you can take a different way, and it's okay.
Well, the you take a lot from the Jewish stories and the Jewish writings that are not 100% biblical. Like,
right.
They're not Bible because
extra biblical.
They're not the 66. They're things that people wrote. And,
right.
I always in the past never looked at any of that. And so I looked at some stuff that wasn't written by Jewish pastors for some of my extracurriculars, but not, faith stuff. And so because of that, when you start dealing with the levels and stuff like that, those are things that are interesting. And then when you look at the KJV and you look at some of the texts, like the words for chasm,
okay,
I find interesting because when you look at the original word for it, right?
I would like to look that up. Where were we? In Luke what?
16:26. And in the Strong's, it's the word for gulf.
But where is it?
16:26.
16:26.
Yeah.
16.
It's only used once in the entire KJV Bible.
Really?
Yep.
That's always fun.
The word gulf.
That's the only time a word is used.
Which we think of as chasm. And so it was interesting. I'll let you get to it before I say anything about it. Let me know when you're there.
1 second. I've got the. Oh, the King James even translated it as the word gulf.
Yeah, they translated it gulf instead of chasm. And
let's see, from a form of an absolute primary KO to gape or yawn, a chasm or vacancy. So like a nothingness.
A nothingness. And there's a little bit stronger. Like when you think of a chasm, you're like, it's a chasm.
Yeah.
You think of a gulf, and you're like, it's a gulf. It's got a high place, it's got a high place. And that's what you think of. You think of a high place and a high place, and you're looking across two high places.
Yeah.
Well, then when you look at chasm means something a little different, which is what the CSB used. And then you look at or vacancy, an impassable interval. That just means, like, even they're like, gulf? You can like, tell it was like,
I'm not sure what word to use here that gives this the right...
And it's the only time that word is used in the New Testament. And so it's interesting. Yeah. So it's kind of like, we talk about, levels to levels and
for those of you at home that want to see what we're seeing, you can go to Blue Letter Bible and you can type in G5490 and it'll show you what we're looking at here, this information that we're talking about, the Strong's translation of the word. So you don't have to sit there at home going, I guess I have to take their word for it. I don't know where to look that up. BlueLetterBible.org, and you type in G5490. Or you can go download the program eSword.
E-Sword.
E-Sword.net.
Yep.
It'll be free for PC. It's free on iPad. It's free. Nope, that's the only place it's free. If you only got on your Mac, you have to pay for it.
It's a nominal
fee. I think you can get on an iPhone for free, actually.
I believe the iPhone is, yes.
Yeah. No, the iPad I had to pay for. So iPhone's free, PC's free, iPad or Mac you'll have to pay for it.
And he hasn't even tried Android.
It's not Android?
He hasn't even tried it.
Okay.
Different development set, and that's the problem. Is the 3 Macs, he has a developer that can do it. I guess he's never. I mean, it's a pretty big program, so I get it.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
But I love that. Right. When you start looking at the, we talk about the levels and we talk about and for the average Joe that just goes,
it just goes right over your head.
Yeah, it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, and then you look at a word like this, and it's like, well, that's 6 characters that make no sense. Like, what does that even, and then you look into it, and it's, that chasm is a pretty good word, and it's really chasma is the word. So I mean, it's not chasm makes the most sense because it's literally where we get the word chasm. It's the same word, but then when you think about it as like it's not just what we think of on the planet Earth as a chasm. It's just space between. And so there's often been a drawing of from back in the day, and it was the Earth, and then it had the spiritual realms here, and it had the 7 multiple layers of hell and multiple layers of heaven, and then there was the chasm that they drew in between, and it's interesting. And if you look at Dante,
okay,
right?
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, he even describes the parts of hell as levels that you could, if you're on the right part of the level, you could still look up.
Okay.
And so because of that, it's interesting to think of, almost like rings that go down and then down is down. And it was like a bubbling volcano, it was like you in a bad place. But even there, you could look up and straight up through is kind of how I was always taught. But that being said, it's interesting, just little differences like that, where it's not fundamental differences because we both agree, Jesus went down, Jesus worked his way up, whatever work his way up means. Time works much differently in the spiritual realm. We all know that because it's always interesting. I think it was Isaiah. Really should look stuff up before I start talking, but that's fine. I believe it's Isaiah that is praying, and the angel gets to him, and he's like, "What took you so long?" And the angel's like, "I just fought a war while you were praying. Sorry." Like, it's that whole. I think it was one of the major prophets, but I think it was Isaiah. And Michael's like, I had to literally fight 3/4 of, fallen everything to get to you. You need to relax. I was working on it. So.
Yeah, so my kids have started playing with the baby monitor, so give me 1 second to go turn it off.
The kids are playing with it, so it's...
I'm live in here. Stop that. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
The joys of live broadcasting from home.
That's okay. I saw something about a weatherman, and he's having to do it at home with the green screen, right?
Yeah.
And his cat jumped into his arms.
He said, Bill Nye, the science guy.
Singing to Pinnacle. He was changing his diaper.
I'm still alive.
This cat jumps into his arms while he's, pointing and moving around, and the cat just jumps and he grabs the cat and he finishes the talking, and he's got this cat, and he's like, city, county, state, news broadcast.
Yeah.
But he's stuck at home, so it's like I'm now broadcasting the weather with a cat in my arms. Here we go. So
That's funny.
it's humorous.
Yeah.
I have a really big gray hair right here.
I see it.
Here in my beard that I didn't notice until we started broadcasting, and now it's all I can look at on our screens. You got one right here, but that's okay.
Oh, I've got several.
Yeah.
All throughout.
Yeah. Well, now it's
But
much.
it's not as bad for me because my hair's more red and,
Yeah.
soft colors, but your hair's like blackish. So when
That's
you get
okay.
gray hair, it's like, oh.
That's okay. Now that I've shaved my head, I actually had a teenager ask me if I was trying to be like those TikTokers, Beer Bon John and Iron Sanctuary. To which I responded, "No, I'm getting old. I'm going bald and didn't like how it looked because it was so thin. When I was on camera and there was light hitting my face, you could see straight through. And no, we're not playing that game anymore. Like, I'd rather not have hair than be looking at the wall behind my head while I'm talking to people.
Through
Like,
your hair.
Yeah, I can't do it, man. Can't do it. Like,
Well,
nah,
that's why you were in hats, though.
It is, but a lot of times with streams and stuff, your head gets hot, and it's just then it's irritating, and then you mess with it, and So I was just like, Tina looked over at me. She was over here last Sunday. Last Sunday was the first one. That's why I still had the hat on because I wasn't comfortable yet. But she was right here, and she looks over and she goes,
Why do you gotta be like that?
"With your beanie on, I don't think I even mind."
I
Yeah.
said, I don't think I would mind.
With
See.
your beanie
But I also
on.
said, that's not permission for you to do this.
And then I went and did it.
And then you went and did it, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not permission.
Well, you helped me shave it.
No, you didn't.
The heat, that's why I prefer the trucker hats.
Yeah.
Because they got all the mesh holes, and it lets the heat out, so.
Yeah, I can't do it, dude. Sorry.
No?
No.
Yeah.
I gotta do the fitted. I gotta look like something.
Like something.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So.
All right, so do you have anything else you want to talk about the specific podcast?
No, like I said, we this is one where we are in accordance, and there's not really even doctrinal things that are sideways. I was always taught even that he didn't go to heaven that moment. Paradise is paradise.
Right. But not everyone was.
Right.
And there are people that are using that, as evidence. They're saying, well, see, you can make a deathbed confessional because of this. And while the rest of Scripture supports, you can make a deathbed confessional, quote unquote. This isn't one of those times.
No, this is something different. Now, do I believe you can? Like you mentioned, the Bible is, hey, if you call upon and believe, that those are two very important parts. It's not just say the right word at the right moment.
Right.
It's say the right word and believe it.
And believe.
Then, yeah, I mean, like if you know, some people start seeing into the spiritual realm as they die, things like that. If you get that deathbed, it is all real, and it's a true belief, sure. But that wasn't this situation. This was, I'm going to see you in paradise. Now, it implies heavily, once I get there, I got you. But not necessarily. It definitely, because in a way, he had that belief. He was like, you different. Like, so there was that line. But it was kind of like you mentioned before, hey, I'll be with you in a few. Like, give me a minute. I'll come talk to you,
Yeah, we'll talk. I'll share the gospel with you.
Yeah.
And we'll see where we land,
Yeah, exactly. I'll give me a minute. I go take care of something.
I got to take care of something.
Yeah. Which he really needed them carpenter muscles to take care of stuff, I'm assuming, down there.
I'm assuming he needed some muscle.
Yeah.
I have an issue with the whole carpenter muscles thing and all those images of Jesus that you see. Okay. I'm going to ask you. If I pointed somebody out and I said, that guy's a glutton and a drunkard, what kind of body shape do you think that guy's got?
Depends.
Well, he might be where it depends, depending on how much he's drinking. But what kind of body shape would a glutton and a drunkard have?
So, it typically a beer belly.
A beer belly.
But everything else depends. Depends on economic structure. Depends on, what's he doing to get the money. There's some depends there.
Okay, but when Jesus was in full-time ministry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's 3 years in.
Yep.
He ain't done no carpentry work in 3 years.
Nope.
He's drinking and eating so much, they're calling him a glutton and a drunkard.
Yep.
What do you think he's going to be looking like?
So, to be fair, in that time period, he was still doing a lot of walking. Food was much different. It was a Mediterranean diet. Their terms for gluttons, especially the Pharisees, was a lot different. But you take someone who did work, even if you're doing old school carpentry was no joke. So, even if he did a small apprenticeship as a teen, he's still going to have muscles. He might have that gut now, but the muscle's still going to be there.
I just think it's funny. All the portrayals of Jesus on the cross, he's always this skinny dude.
No, I don't
go that route. He's not jacked. He doesn't have big muscles or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way that's what Jesus looked like.
No, I don't agree with him being some tiny... It's good.
Frail, emaciated looking thing.
But it's kind of like Superman. The portrayals of Superman.
Kind of like Superman.
Right. So the portrayals of Superman always irritate me for the same reason. You always get these guys and they are jacked. Right? And it's like, I'm jacked and I'm Superman. You know how much weight and how often Superman with his metabolism would have to work out to be jacked? He'd be up there pushing Saturn around just to see what happened. You wouldn't... His everyday look isn't... He gonna be looking like a small, nerdy newspaper dude.
Small, nerdy, mild-mannered.
He doesn't need it. And it always irritates me when it's like... He shouldn't be pushing Saturn around. It would mess up the whole universe. I get that, but... I love her, but she has become a small Mexican version of me when it comes to arguing with me, where when you do that one thing that can't be it. That's me.
So she's become a Noomsican?
Yeah,
She has no objection.
but we need to find a better word for that.
She says you need to find a better word, but she doesn't have an
A
objection.
better word.
A Noomsian. That's better.
That sounds like I'm starting my own religion. We're not going down that route.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Never mind then.
we're not having Noomsians.
Noomsians.
That's that religion I found every time I play
Yeah,
Civilization.
when you're playing Civilization.
But I always use the lion because it works well.
So for the next 6 minutes, tell me about the wedding.
The wedding went really good. It was...
Hey, for all the people at home, you officiated a wedding yesterday.
I officiated my first wedding yesterday
Right.
for a couple that were a friend of mine.
Because you're ordained through the Ecclesian House.
Yep. I am a
As one of
pastor.
our pastors and as one of our members
I have
of the
that
board, one of our
ability.
elders.
It was interesting. I made sure to make it solemn, but yet respectful to the crowd. Of course, the crowd was mostly on Facebook because, well, quarantine.
Yeah.
So, which worked out well for my first one because there weren't many people, which is great because I wasn't stressed about messing
You
something
remember
up.
to sign the marriage license, right?
Hmm?
You remember to sign the marriage license, right?
The marriage license will be signed.
Will be signed.
They left it at home.
Okay. Well, they're
bringing
not
it-
married yet then.
They're bringing it back tomorrow.
They're not married in the eyes of the law until you sign that piece of paper.
Technically, they're not married into the eyes of the law until the law gets that paper. So,
No, they accept the signing date as the official, but
no, but it's fine. It's interesting. It was good. Shared a prayer. Lots of jokes. Because they wanted it to be
marriage.
marriage. True love. That was part of it, yeah. And then I threw in something for him because he's a huge Johnny Cash fan. So when they talked about
That's what the Ring of Fire stuff was about.
when
I
they
was
talked
like,
about when they did the rings,
why the weird references to Ring of Fire?
yeah. One could say
He was so scared.
love is a burning fire,
Yeah.
and Charlie's taller than me, and Liz is much shorter than me. So that it's one of those funny marriages because they're like this. But
Okay.
and he's sitting there and he's real nervous and he cried during her vows and he cried to, ooh, look, someone's playing Warframe. All right, go away, notification. So, that's the problem with it being on my main screen. Kale, I hope you're having fun. I was like, some may say it's like a burning fire. Love is a flame that creates a fiery ring, and he got all like his chest busted, like came up more like I know this. Majority of the people had no idea what I was talking about, and it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
It was for him because that song was written by Johnny Cash about his marriage, and how it turns into a flame, and you put that ring on, and it changes you forever, whether you want it to or not. Because he was one of those guys that made some mistakes.
Right.
And so, I've always looked up to Johnny Cash with where he ended up, not where he was in his most addictive states, but where he ended up.
Right.
So it was good, and then we had a decent reception. Again, it was very, very small because of quarantine rules, but it was good.
Okay. I was never really a fan of Johnny Cash until he did the 9 Inch Nails cover. And then I was in, man. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Johnny Cash, to me, is growing up in Nashville. First off, I was always like,
You.
yeah, me growing up in Nashville. He's that. This is as close to country as I'll allow it. Because technically, because of the way music was done back then, he is classified as country music.
Mhm.
But Nibbles, the cat, is biting my wife while she tries to pet her. Pretty standard in this house. So if she yells, everything's fine. So growing up, I liked Johnny Cash from that standpoint. But then as an adult, I found out about his, more about his story and where he ended up and how he got there. And in the end, when he became close friends with Billy Graham and then wrote a novelization, a Christian fiction, about a retelling of The Man in White, which was Paul's conversion story retold differently. Kind of the extracurricular of some of the stuff that happened between, because people know that Paul studied. Paul was smart, but he goes into more like, this is what Paul did.
Paul was learned.
Yeah, and in the beginning of the book, he's at the temple in his room full of scrolls, and he decides which ones to take, and so it's kind of an interesting little look at the, what could have been, one of those kind of stories, and just, I really found a lot of respect for him, and then I started listening to more of the words than just the music, and then you start going, like, you can see the progression of his music even through his life, and he's such a powerful conversion. And then when he does the 9 Inch Nails song, the guy from 9 Inch Nails, whose name just jumped out of my head, Anyway, not important for this part. When Johnny Cash sent him when the manager was like, hey, Johnny wants to cover your song, Hurt. The guy was like, I don't know, man. Johnny Cash, that's real far away from. And he was like, okay. He's already done it, but he hasn't published it because Trent Reznor, thank you. He wants permission before he releases it, but he's done it because he was so emotional. He already covered it. Here it is. And
not only did he already do it, but he knows he's long in the tooth.
Yeah.
And he's not sure he's going to be able to do anything else.
Yeah. And Trent Reznor said when he started listening to it, he started crying. And he was like, nah, he's good, do it. It went from, and then that was the last thing him and his wife recorded together, like the last video that she was ever in together and all that. And so it becomes then even after, like now it starts and like if it's the song, I'm like, I'm okay. I can make it through the song. But like if it ends up in my YouTube playlist, that one hits, and then like he comes around the corner and she's sitting at the table and you're just like, nope, done. I cry now. Like I sit here, I cry now at computer. Like,
I cry now.
Which happened multiple times yesterday. Huh?
You make tears from my eyes come out.
Yeah. Which happened yesterday constantly.
Yeah.
One of my friends looked at me and goes, I thought you were going to cry. I was like, dude, I read his vows already. I read her vows already. I read my stuff already. I've already cried. Like, I'm good at this point. Like, I can stop myself at tearing up because I've already cried. I've been sitting at my desk crying, reading these people's stuff already. So, But anyway. So yeah, it went good. It was good. It was a little stressful because of some situations, but none of them were not overcomable.
It's a wedding. Something is
Okay.
always stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was good.
Okay.
And
All right.
I've already been asked to do another one.
Really?
Yeah. So this might end up being a thing I do. Which is...
Quarantine weddings?
No, just weddings, which is something that was never in my game plans.
No. Because your game plans were games.
Your fault.
My fault?
Yeah.
What's my fault?
Huh?
What's my fault?
What's your fault?
Yeah.
I was just on Twitch.
I'm not the author and finisher of your faith.
You're the dragger.
I'm going to blame somebody, blame Jesus.
You
You're the-
shouldn't need a dragger. You should just listen when the Lord tells you to do something.
Oh!
And then tells you to do something through your wife. I love you.
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
The Lord tells you, your wife tells you, and then I come along and tell you again, and you're like, yeah, I guess you guys are right.
And then random strangers come up and go, oh, you a Twitch pastor? Like the games? Yeah, I play games and I'm a pastor. Oh, you're awesome. All right. Cool. We doing it. It's official.
So here at the end of this live stream, if you want to go on to Twitch and find Pastor Nooms, you can go find him on there. Currently, his name is Master Nooms, but it may change to Pastor Nooms.
It might have already changed.
Not sure.
I pushed the button.
It might have already changed.
They might be viewing it under Pastor Nooms, even though they looked at Master Nooms. Anyway.
Right. So go find Pastor Nooms on Twitch. And
our website
have
needs to be at the bottom, but isn't yet.
What?
Our website's in the text, isn't it?
No.
I thought you always put it like a link to the podcast.
Oh, well, there's a link to the podcast there. Yeah.
Yeah, so they can find the church. They can find from the church from the website, from the podcast page, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
And then, so we're listening to the new podcast that just came out. It is Illiterate Idiots is the name of the new episode.
Illiterate
so go check
Idiots.
It out. Yeah. Illiterate Idiots. So go check that out and have a good week. And until next time.
And now we giving a buffer. Now
Giving
we're giving
a
a buffer. And
Giving a
then we're going to
buffer.
end the stream. And when we end
This
the
is my
stream...
buffer dance.
That's your buffer dance?
That's my buffer dance.
All right.
You need a buffer dance. What's your buffer dance?
I was already doing it. That's all you guys got.
Just a sway?
There's neck movement.
Oh, okay.
It's not just a sway. Tina called us weird.
Well, if the shoe fits.
I'm not wearing any shoes, so nah.
I'm wearing flip-flops.
No, I took my shoes off. They were getting on my nerves. They were hurting my feet. I think I'm close to another gout flare-up.
Okay. As soon as that live stream's done, I'd like to hear the interesting stories.
Uh-huh. All right, I'm going to hit end.